Today's offerings include advice to help you best prepare for your event. We offer sample questions to get you thinking about what you bring to the table professionally. Sample questions you are likely to be asked, when you get to your event, as well as those questions which are great to ask of the people that you meet. We're also going to provide other tips on how to maximize your impact during your event, as well as guidelines on following up after your event. First, a little bit of information about who we are. My name is Jane Bouzek. I'm the owner of the Clarity Connection here in the Chicago area. I graduated with an MA in sociology from the University of Chicago in 1998. I am a certified mediator, coach, and trainer. My areas of passion and expertise include leadership development, conflict management, and creating collaborative work environments. My specialty is creating customized programs to create highly effective collaborative work environments and relationships. Now I'd like to turn the focus on to Anne-Marie Peters, my collaborative partner for this webinar.
Hello, my name is Anne-Marie Peters, and I'm so happy to be here today with Janie to talk to you about networking. Like Jane, I'm a fellow alum of the university, and I'm also co-owner of a company called Interview Savvy, as well as a principal partner in the US LTU hiring project. My focus is on helping people to navigate the job market and to prepare and land a great job. The richest people in the world look for and build networks. Everyone else looks for work. Robert Kiyosaki. So smart people know that networking is essential for success. In fact, you may have heard the statistic that over 70% of all jobs are found through networking. Some people actually say it's closer to 85%. But what exactly is networking? It can be defined in a number of ways. It can be meeting people through LinkedIn. Some people network through job clubs. It can be chatting with a fellow commuter on the train. And I'm certain that everyone in attendance today is very familiar with social networking. But today, we are focusing on networking in person, and even more specifically at a university alumni event. If you're nervous, you're not alone. With very few exceptions, even the most seasoned executives get a little anxiety when facing a room full of strangers. That's why we're here today, to help build your confidence so that you can make the most of your networking events. To be successful at networking, we have some general suggestions. Develop a common point of interest. It will make your conversation more memorable for both you and the people you meet. Ask great questions. Talking about the weather is fine, but you make a better impression having some simple, yet conversation-provoking questions prepared. Answer questions effectively and concisely. It's not difficult to predict some of the common questions you'll be asked at a networking event, especially one where you share a commonality already. Practicing answers to these questions will help you be more relaxed and make a better impression. Listen. The single most important thing you can do is to listen. This means giving people your full attention and not just standing there waiting for them to finish speaking while you think of what to say next. Helping others is something that many people don't realize is a critical component to networking. In fact, some experts say that the golden rule of networking is to offer help twice as much as you ask for it. We will get into details on all of these points today.
So, the best way to do all that, to develop common points of interest, effectively answer questions, to be wholly present enough to ask great questions and listen well and be ready to help others, is to know yourself. We're going to have you ask yourself 5 important questions. And here we would like you to carve out some time in the next week or so and create an environment for yourself where you can put in some serious thought work. I'd say give yourself a good hour for this exercise. Do whatever you need to create that environment. Grab a coffee, glass of wine, whatever works for you, and just write. I'd like you to think about first, what am I passionate about? What drives me? What do I do or think about, even if no one is paying me to do it? How am I unique professionally? What makes me different than the person next to me? How can I personally contribute to any or to an organizational goal or add to an organization's culture? What tasks or challenges excite me the most? What problems are most interesting for me to solve? This leads to the next question. What 3 things do I do really well? What am I good at? What do people typically seek me out for? And finally, how can I help others? Everybody has a problem and is looking for someone to help them fix it. I want you to ask yourself how you can use your unique combination of passions and strengths to help others solve their problems, or, to use common business jargon, ease their pain points. Okay, so once you have done your thought work around your passions and your strengths, it will be time to create your elevator pitch. Your pitch basically lets people know who you are professionally in a short amount of time, ideally in less than 30 seconds. You are going to use your passions and your strengths to create your own unique pitch. And it doesn't matter where you are in your career trajectory. You could be at the beginning, in the middle, at an advanced level. A well-rehearsed pitch lets others know who you are and what you have to offer. So here, next is an opportunity, or here's an example of someone taking great advantage of a pitch opportunity, but missing the mark.
I'm a college business ambassador, and I like art and painting and wakeboarding. My mom is like our biggest fan. Can we get a picture together really quick? Will you hold it? Take our picture. Your arms are longer. Okay. No, that's perfect. That's perfect. I'll send it to her. Okay. So, how are things? How's the First Lady, the kids, you know, all this? Itchy? Sure. So, what are your plans as president? Well, what was it? Have you met Austin Eagle? He's really cool. I like your shoes. They're really shiny. Can you shine them yourself? You're the president. I bet you have somebody to do that for you. You're just the nicest guy. This is my floor. I'll see you later.
Okay, we love this guy. We love this guy. He's courageous. He jumped right in, no fear at all. He's enthusiastic, and he's confident. Let me go back to this one. And he's confident. But of course, what makes this clip so funny is what he does wrong. First, a couple of things he does right. He introduces himself, and he identifies his role. That's perfect. And he engages in conversation. Here's where, though, it starts to go a little off track. Chris is engaging, but for one, he is overly familiar, like the whole bit about asking for a photo and telling the president of the university that his arms are longer than his. Also, he focuses on his hobbies, asks personal questions, and most importantly, he does not listen at all. I'm sure you noted that the president was not able to utter a single word. So Chris makes a strong impression, but needs to practice his pitch so that when the opportunity arises, he is calm, prepared, and focused on delivering a great pitch. So following are a couple examples of pitches that might be more effective. This is an example of what someone early in his or her career might say. My studies at the University of Chicago focused on the social sciences. My passion is working with underserved communities in urban areas. I'm currently exploring opportunities and research and development, and my goal this evening is to expand my knowledge about opportunities in these areas. It's short, it's sweet, it's specific. Here's another example of a pitch for someone who is either in transition, or in other words, looking for a job, or someone who is seeking more business. And it's actually sort of like my own pitch, so it's close to my heart. My passion is helping organizations learn how to manage and work in a way that creates a collaborative and highly functioning work environment. I've observed that many organizations have a difficult time managing conflict within their work teams. And this can lead to costly outcomes, such as low motivation, low productivity, attrition, and even lawsuits. So what I do is I create customized programs that include one-on-one coaching and consulting, lunch and learns, mediating, and facilitation. So there's a little more meat to it, but it's still fairly brief, still specific, and still emphasizes both passions and strengths. Write your pitch, and then try it out on as many of your friends and family members as you can. Practice makes perfect.
So whether you just want to meet new people or you're looking for a job, we all want to make the most of a networking event. Preparing a strategy will help you do that. University of Chicago has provided a great resource in the Look Who's Coming list that is posted on the alumni website for each event. Use it to find out what companies will be there. Then do your research. We'll talk a little bit more about research in a moment. Make a list of at least 5 companies or attendees whom you'd like to meet. It might not be easy to identify who is who once you're at the event. It's okay to ask staff or other people if they know a particular person. However, it's very important that you don't search for your target at the expense of avoiding other conversations. You never want to appear rude, and you also may miss an opportunity that could be fantastic, even though someone might not be on your official list. The more you know, the more prepared you are, and the more confident you will feel. Whenever possible, do your homework on the companies that will be present at an event. Some of the basic information you would want to know includes, first, where is it located? If the company only has locations in Ohio, and you are hoping to move to the West Coast, you may want to rank this company lower on your list of companies and people to interact with. What are the primary products and services? If you are really interested in a company, you should know something about it. You don't want to ask someone from that company, so what does your company do anyway? Research the positions that are available. That way you can prepare your own questions and comments around the opportunities that you know fit your skills and passions. Is there anything new or noteworthy about this company? A quick Yahoo or Google search, or even just going to the company's homepage, can typically give you some current developments that you can use to connect in your conversation. Knowing this basic information gives you topics of conversation, and also it demonstrates to people that you cared enough to do some homework. Once you're at the event, you want to further your knowledge through conversation. And most importantly, you want to connect with people through your conversation. These are some good questions that can get you started. What company are you with? What is your association with the university? What is your role at Deloitte? I'd like to hear more about DuPont. What is the culture like at Deloitte? What do you find most satisfying in your work? What is the biggest challenge you face? You may notice that some of these questions are follow-up questions. That's because you want to keep the conversation going. The key to great conversation is to engage the group or person with good questions. But again, even more importantly, to listen.
So just as there are basic questions to prepare in advance that you will want to ask others, there are some pretty common questions that you will hear that you should prepare for in advance of the event. If you answer these in advance on paper and review your responses, you will be ready for almost any questions that come your way. So I'm just going to read these out as they appear on your screen. If they seem helpful, just take a moment and write them down. What are your short and long-term goals, career goals specifically? What would you say are your top 3 strengths? What interests you most about our organization? Tell me about your work experience. Tell me more about your experience at Acme. Tell me about your experience at the university. What are your hobbies or interests? Here, you will want to prepare a couple of appropriate ones to share. For example, let's say music is one of your hobbies. A risky reply would be, I like to follow the Grateful Dead around the country. A better reply would be, I really enjoy improvisation-based rock music. Whatever the case may be, if you have ready answers on hand, you are less likely to be thrown off by unexpected questions during your event.
We've talked about what to say. Now we're going to talk about how you present yourself in regard to appearance. Whether we like it or not, people very quickly assess you based on appearance. In fact, studies show that people formulate a first impression within 1/10 of a second of seeing you. Therefore, whether we agree or like it, the fact is that your appearance does matter a lot. You don't need to be perfect or America's Next Top Model, but you want to look put together. This demonstrates that you are serious about the event and starts you off on the right foot. The following are some simple tips that may seem obvious to some, but we have seen these overlooked again and again. Have clean, combed, neatly styled hair. You do not need to go to a salon. Just simply be sure to look neat and put together. By manicured hands, we mean clean and tidy nails and cuticles. Again, you don't need to go to a salon and get a manicure. Keep your makeup subtle, as well as your jewelry and your style of dress. You want the attention on what you say and how you say it, not on something distracting. Minimize your cologne or aftershave. Let's not have your fragrance announce your arrival before you join a group. The university events are business casual. The phrase business casual can cause confusion and concern for many people, but it is often the suggested dress code for business events. We suggest, for men, a jacket or a sport coat, dress shirt and pants, tie would be optional. For women, the line is a bit gray between business casual and business these days. We suggest pants or a skirt and blouse or a dress. Certainly you can add a jacket or a cardigan. For both men and women, we don't recommend a business suit, but it would be better to be overdressed than underdressed. Be sure you're wearing dress shoes in good condition. And also keep in mind, you may be standing for some time, so try to choose shoes that won't be too uncomfortable. When it comes to business casual, pay attention to the necklines, skirt length, and shoes. They should be what most people would call modest. Dressing conservatively, you run little risk of making a negative impression. For both men and women, make sure your pants are not too short, plaids, or too long, dragging on the floor, or long enough that you are stepping on the cuff. And what does coordinated socks mean? It means never white socks. Dark socks that match your pants. At least as importantly as what you should wear for business casual events are some hints at what you should not wear. Sunglasses are not an accessory. They should not be worn pushed back on your head, clipped on the front of your shirt or pocket. In short, just be sure to put them completely away. Even expensive or dressy jeans are not recommended for business casual. Sundresses or strapless dresses should not be worn. Even if you wear a jacket, a strapless dress is not business casual. The fact that we mentioned short skirts more than once should demonstrate the importance of this point. Keep the attention on you, not on your outfit or lack thereof. And athletic shoes are simply not business casual. The bottom line is this: if you present a put-together image, people will likely start with a positive impression, or at least a neutral impression. If you don't, you might have to work that much harder to undo a negative first impression or be remembered for all of the wrong reasons.
Okay, so the last piece of the preparation puzzle, so what to do in advance of your event, is business cards. The business card, either virtual or actual, is the best way of sharing your contact information and getting other people's contact information right there on the spot. It's a much more reliable way to ensure future interaction than a simple, oh, okay, I'll remember your name and I'll look you up on LinkedIn. You probably won't remember their name. You can use an actual card, which people still use, or a virtual business card app such as Guidebook. Whichever you use, make sure you include your name, profession or title, email and phone number. If you decide to get actual business cards, there are several online as well as local options, including gotprint.com and move.com. Here's an example of a card for someone who is looking for a job or who is in transition. So it just has, it's very simple, has her name, Mary Smith, she's a marketing professional, msmith1988@yahoo.com, and her phone number. It's just the basic information about you. You can certainly get fancy if you want, and you will find loads of online examples to give you ideas. However you choose to go, just make sure you have something to give people that lets them know how to connect with you again. Okay, this is the big day. This is the day you've been waiting for. And if you've done the work we've talked about, you're more than ready. So your goal for this event, for your networking event, is to engage at least 10 new people in conversation, 10. And of those 10, 5 of them should be from the list of companies or participants you researched ahead of time. The other 5, pick 5 random people that seem interesting and go for it. Now, whether you're an introvert or a confirmed social butterfly, networking events can be intimidating. Here are some tips for how to approach people you don't know. Now first, this might seem obvious, but hold your drink in your left hand. This will allow you to have your right hand free for shaking hands, writing notes, etc. And also, you don't want to have a cold, damp hand be someone's first impression of you. Next, you're going to choose your target. It can be someone standing by themselves, sitting down, or your target can be a group of people. Smile and walk toward your target. It's as easy as that. The introduction. So when you approach a group or an individual, there are some, you probably already know this from social events or just from your day-to-day experiences interacting with other people. But sometimes when you're in an event, in a networking event, you can forget basic etiquette. So this is just to remind you, you can say, may I join you? Or, I hope I'm not interrupting. Introduce yourself by your first and your last name. And then you want to have an icebreaker to transition to your conversation. Something such as, how are you enjoying the event? Or, what did you think about the panel or the speaker? And that's it. You're in and ready to have your meaningful conversation.
Okay, so you did it. You've got their attention. That's a great first step. Now, how to keep it. How will you interact with the person or the people that you've just met? What should you do? Let's start with this example of what you should not do.
Hello there, Roger Metcalf. How are you, Beryl?
Actually, it's Betsy.
Yes, of course. Having a good time, are you?
Oh,
yes,
yes.
meeting lots of interesting people. I've spoken to dozens of people today, I can tell you, and given out lots of cards, in fact, yes. So tell me, Barbara, what do you do then?
Actually, it's Betty.
Yes. I'm a marketing executive, you know, working a lot with blue chip companies at the moment and making quite an impression in the States, I can tell you. Yes.
Well, that sounds very interesting.
Yes, it is.
I'm a marketer too.
Well, that's
You know,
marvelous, Beryl. I'm sure my business could help you. Yes, in fact, we're helping so many businesses at the moment, you can't afford to miss out. Look, let me give you my card. Give me a call sometime, and I'm sure we can do business.
Actually, can I give you my card?
Oh, yes, of course. There, thank you. Yes, you know, if you're spending money on marketing, Beryl, then I'm your man.
Well, it sounds very interesting, this marketing. So, what exactly?
That guy over there. Oh, a multi-million-pound player, I can tell you. Have to give him my card.
Nice meeting you too.
Okay, so very amusing, but we also learned some lessons here. What are some things Roger Metcalf does wrong? He gets her name wrong, he interrupts, he talks over her, he doesn't give her his attention, and he doesn't listen. And let's not even get started about his jacket. So how can we do a better job than Roger? One of the best things you can do to make a great impression is to be enthusiastic. Be careful not to confuse enthusiastic with obnoxious, like Roger. Enthusiasm in this case is a friendly smile, paying attention to the conversation, and being prepared with friendly remarks. Some other important pieces to the interaction are to introduce yourself by your first and last name. You've heard that a couple of times, so you may want to note that's something we think is important. Have a firm handshake and make eye contact. Keep that good eye contact throughout the conversation. Repeat people's names. It's nice to meet you, James. It's not just polite. It's saying it out loud is also a really good way to remember people's names. There may be a number of distractions. You might hear a burst of laughter. You might be wondering what your friend is up to. Someone you really wanted to meet may walk into the room. Even so, don't let your eyes wander around the room. Listen with your full attention to whomever you are with. Move around the room. Resist the temptation to stay with a group or a person that you've hit it off with for too long. Even though it's comfortable, keep in mind that your goal is to meet 10 people.
All right, so when do you use your pitch? You worked really hard on it and you want to figure out the right time at which to introduce it. It should not be part of your introduction to a group or an individual. So you should not go up and say, hi, nice to meet you, Bob, my name is Janie, and blah, 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 and then just start a whole series of or bit of information about yourself. No, instead, it should be a conversational response to inquiries. So the inquiries that will prompt you could include, tell me about yourself. What is it that you do? What brings you here tonight? What have you been doing since graduation? So all of those are great prompts for you to initiate your pitch. Once you present your pitch, the rest of the conversation should follow smoothly. And of course, you want to remember to ask your conversation partners what they do as well. So your number one task during these conversations is to find your overlapping interests. Why is this important to find overlapping interests? It serves because it serves two functions. One, it's going to provide both you and your conversation partner information about how you can be a help to each other. And two, it gives you something to refer back to during your follow-up, which we will cover later. Moving on to the offer. Now this might seem counterintuitive, but whenever possible, offer help to the people you talk to. For example, if someone is talking about a topic you've recently researched, you could say, oh, that reminds me of an article I read in the Harvard Business Review. I can forward that to you if you like. Or let's say the person you're talking with mentions that he is looking for work in the marketing field and you know someone at the event in a management role in marketing. You could say, I think you'd connect well with Sarah, the director of marketing at Acme. Would you like me to introduce you? And finally, if you think of someone in your own organization that might be helpful to the person, you could say, I know my firm has a research position open. Would you like me to make an introduction? Offering to help other networkers will make you stand out as a potential candidate and as an all-around awesome person.
The currency of real networking is not greed, but generosity. Keith Ferrazzi. Generally, in the long run, the more you give, the more you receive in return. So why help others? It's a great way to build your reputation as someone who's a helpful contact and to pay it forward. Someday someone will help you when you need it. Call it good karma. Leverage the law of reciprocity. There is actually truly a long definition for the law of reciprocity. But simply put, when I help you, there is a sense of obligation and sometimes even eagerness for you to return the favor and help me. In short, helping others feels good and ultimately helps you. Networking is not about hunting. It is about farming. It is about cultivating relationships. Don't engage in premature solicitation. So what does that mean? Don't ask for a job. Really. Don't ask for an interview either. Why, you're thinking? This is simply not the place for that. If this event were a career fair, then yes, you absolutely would want to ask for an interview or at least for information about getting an interview. But a networking event is for planting and cultivating, not reaping. You can and you should ask for contact information or a meeting or an introduction. And these are some great ways to further the connection that you've made. Would you like to exchange contact information? Do you know someone who would be a good source of information regarding research on urban planning? Would you be interested in meeting sometime for coffee or over the phone to continue our conversation? All great ways to continue that connection. Now you've done an excellent job introducing yourself into a conversation, answering questions, asking great questions, listening, and asking for a future opportunity to communicate. How do you know when it's time to move on? When a person starts looking around the room or seems distracted, you should begin to close the conversation. If you've been speaking with the same person or group for a long time, it's time to get on to another interesting conversation. If you notice a conversation has stalled, you don't necessarily have to save it. You can use it as an opportunity to move on. And how should you move on? It's also very important to exit the conversation gracefully. You've done a great job engaging the person or people you're speaking with, and you don't want to leave on a negative note. These are some very simple exit lines. It was very nice to meet you. It was great hearing about. I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Be sure and shake hands with each person, and you can add something to close, like enjoy the rest of your evening. These lines seem very simple, but do practice them because it will help make them as smooth as possible.
You knew this was coming. Every how-to webinar has a what not to do section, and this one is no different. So these might seem obvious to you, and if so, don't be offended. We just want to make sure we've covered all the bases. First of all, don't interrupt. Let your conversation partners finish their thoughts and their sentences. Second, and this is a big one, try not to be negative about anything. If you already know in advance that you have a bad taste in your mouth about some person or experience, do some thought work ahead of time on how to present the situation in a positive, productive manner. Next, don't monopolize the conversation. I think sometimes when we're a little nervous, we tend to talk a lot to hide it. I know I do. If you feel yourself doing this, pause and then ask some open-ended questions of your conversation partner to focus on them. Next, don't exclude anyone. A temptation might be to determine who may or may not be a help to you in your career and then act accordingly. But remember that you never know who might be a valuable contact or whom you may be able to help. During your conversations, don't ask personal questions. So things like marital status, whether or not someone has kids, what kind of perfume they're wearing, and so on. Those are topics to steer away from. Stick to professional questions only. Now here's a big dilemma. Should you sit down? It's been a long day, you're tired, why not? What could harm? Well, one reason is that we tend to stay put once we're seated. And that means there's less of an opportunity to make your 10 new people quote. Our advice is, unless you're joining a group that is already seated, keep moving. And the final don't, try not to move in a pack with your friends and colleagues. Anne-Marie referred to that earlier, and that's pretty important. You need to branch out on your own, and you'll be much more likely to meet and interact with new people.
Remember when we talked about business cards? Imagine you now have in front of you the stack of business cards you collected as you met people. Now imagine ripping them up one by one. If you aren't going to follow up, you may as well do that. Follow-up is critical, or you will have wasted your own time, the time of the people you met, and a great opportunity. Follow-up is your key to success at this event. And the good news is, it's really not that difficult. Make notes on the contacts you met. This should be done at the event or as soon as possible afterward. If you do get business cards, make the notes right on the back. Jot down specifics to jog your memory later. You can always send out a personalized LinkedIn invitation. You absolutely should send a thank you or a great to meet you email within 24 hours to everyone you met. This should not be a group message. You need to send individual notes to everyone. It can be the same content that you copy and paste, but be sure that they're sent to each individual person. Follow up promptly if given a date to do so. If someone says, "Give me a call on Monday," be sure to make a note of it and be sure to do it. Following the person or company on Twitter is another common and easy way to stay connected. And if you don't get a response from somebody after your initial contact, wait a couple of weeks and follow up again. Thank you notes are a great way to follow up with people you meet at the event. Don't agonize over it. These are some good tips for you. Keep it short and simple. Refer to any notable conversation topic. This is where those notes that you made after the event are going to come in handy. Use it as an opportunity for an ask. If you miss this chance in person, take advantage of the thank you note. Maybe you thought of a way that you can be of assistance to this person. Fabulous. Use your follow-up note as an opportunity for an offer. So here's a very simple example. How does it look when we put all of these tips together? Dear Joe, I enjoyed our conversation about our common interest in Asian studies at the University of Chicago networking event. Per our conversation, I would appreciate the opportunity to meet your colleague in ACME's research department. Thank you very much for your time and offer to assist. Best regards, Mary Jones. Very simple, to the point, referred to our conversation with specifics, and reminded the contact of their commitment to help you along. Fantastic.
All right, we have covered a lot of material in a short amount of time, but we're hoping that you've taken away some ideas on how to maximize your experience at your upcoming event. A couple of things to keep in mind. Successful networking begins well before the actual event and continues long after. So you're going to want to do your thought work ahead of time about your passions and your strengths, prepare your pitch, learn what you can about the companies and the people you'll be talking with, know what questions you'll be asked and that you might ask others. Dress for the occasion and come prepared with your cards and a strategy for approaching new contacts. Networking is an opportunity to both learn and share and receive and give help. And finally, networking involves beginning, developing, and sustaining relationships over a lifetime. Everything you want in life is a relationship away. So thank you for listening today. Please stay online for a few minutes where Anne-Marie and I will be available to answer your questions live. Please take care and good luck.
Well, thank you so much to Jane and Anne-Marie for that presentation. I hope you found it informative. I know I did. I do have a few questions for you, if you don't mind just spending a few minutes answering some follow-up questions that we have here. The first is, what if you have 20 years of experience in your career and now you're in transition and you're trying to sum things up in just one short elevator pitch, but maybe there are a couple of different things that you could say about yourself that relate to your career. Can you craft different pitches for different situations depending on who you're talking to, or do you recommend one standard pitch just to get the conversation going?
I would recommend, this is Jane, I would recommend starting with one basic pitch. So even if you have, and I can relate to that because I certainly have 20 years of experience, but when I go to an event, I've crafted a pitch or a statement about myself which is applicable to all the different things that I do. So I might, I'm not going to say, oh, well, I graduated from undergrad in this year, and then I did this, and then that, and then I did this. I'm going to focus it on what I'm looking for right now. So yes, I'm going to one event and I'm meeting with one type of person. Maybe I'll kind of tweak it a little bit based on where I am. But pretty much I am, this is in my opinion too, Anne-Marie might see it differently, I am who I am, so if I'm looking for something specific, I craft my pitch to reflect that.
Yes, so I would agree that you can certainly come up with different versions. It's good to have kind of an overall common version that you use, because that way you're always prepared and you don't always know who it is that you're talking to. But just one additional thing I would say is also take a look at your resume as well, because that's where you do have the advantage of knowing exactly what you're applying for, whom you're applying to for a position, and it's a great opportunity to craft it to be more focused on the skills that they're looking for.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's very helpful. Let's say you find yourself in a situation where maybe you're in a conversation with Roger Metcalf from our video earlier, but he would like to stay in that conversation with you and does not sort of make his own graceful exit. How can you go ahead and redirect the conversation to be more productive? Is it worth trying to redirect, or is that when you use your own graceful exit strategies to try to find the next person on your list to chat with?
Yeah, I would say that would be an opportunity to exit gracefully. You can certainly do that. You can say something like, oh, it was great meeting you. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I'm going to I see somebody I need to talk to, or I need to go make a phone call or something, whatever you need to do to very politely disengage from the conversation. Henry, what would you suggest?
I would suggest the same thing. When it's a Roger Metcalf, you're often not going to get anywhere with a person like that. The listening is not going to all of a sudden turn on typically.
Would you recommend the same thing if Roger Metcalf is one of the 5 people that you really wanted to meet with prior to the event?
Ooh, that's a good question. No, I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend that you just summon all of your magical social skills and try to stay in that conversation, and you can redirect though. So if he is, he kept getting Carol's name wrong or Betty's name wrong, but you can redirect. They will, Roger, I'm really interested in, if you don't mind taking a couple minutes and then fill in the blank. What do you want? What do you want from Roger? Know what you want from Roger and what ask you want to make, and go ahead and make it and try. That's what I would suggest.
Absolutely. And that's a nice way to put it. Complimenting the person first, saying, congratulations on all of your expansion into the United States. That's a terrific new development for you. Would you mind if I ask you either more about the transition, or would you mind if I ask you, and then it's time for you to fill in the question that you had prepared for Roger on your networking list?
Definitely agree. I think that shows the reason that research is so important ahead of time for these things. Absolutely. So we also had another question come in here that's a little bit more specific. I'm hoping you have suggestions for this gentleman. He's asking, do you have any suggestions for males who are maybe 50 plus or in sort of the advanced stages of their career trying to network with millennials if they're finding it challenging to find common ground?
That's a good question.
Emery, do you want to start?
Sure, I can start with that. I think that one of the things that you can do is just try to get a perspective of how millennials are different, and no offense meant to that the category that we've given that generation, but there's definitely some common perceptions and common facts about people who have grown up in the millennial generation. So familiarize yourself with that, because doing so will help you understand better who it is that you're talking to, and then it will, I think, reduce the possibility of being offended by somebody, because there is a different way of communicating and a different way of talking with the millennials. The other thing that I would say is just to try to be current. Everybody wants to talk about current events, no matter what age they are. They want to talk about what's currently going on in the world, and certainly if you're in a specific industry, what's happening in that industry. And I think a lot of times people will be appreciative if you're able to lend some history to a current event as well. And you're in a unique position to do that as somebody who is 50 plus.
And and I would, whomever asked that question, I'm around that age, and I find that whomever I'm interacting with, if I focus on them and less on me, it makes for a much better conversation. So asking, if you're feeling uncomfortable for whatever reason, if you say, well, tell me more about yourself, and, just focus on them, that helps. The other thing is that, fortunately, there still remains kind of a protocol for professional conversation and interaction that it'll be it's a little less scary than you might think. So hopefully they'll have learned some of they'll have taken a how to network some webinar as well. But yeah, I mean, anytime you're uncomfortable too, like what Emery said, and then also focusing the conversation on the person.
I'll just add one more thing to that. One of the things that is well known about people who fall into that millennial category is that they're often very accomplished people. So you should pretty easily be able to find something to connect with and to have that overlap. You remember that picture that Jane showed.
And as a follow-up to that, it's not quite the same, but it's similar. What if you're struggling to come up with an offer that you can make to the individual that you're networking with? Maybe you feel that they're too senior to you, that you have nothing to offer them, or even vice versa, like the gentleman mentioned, you're just having trouble finding a way that you might help somebody in that position. Are there good ways to make the conversation productive and positive without necessarily coming up with an offer on the spot?
Yes, I would say definitely, and I understand that, because there are situations in which I don't feel I can help. If I feel like I'm quote unquote out of my league, I don't have to. I may not have anything to offer this individual. I think it's more. And Anne-Marie, tell me what you think, but I think it's more of a mindset of being open to helping support others and providing networking opportunities for something meaningful for others. So even if you don't have that knowledge or that contact, just that mindset I think would be helpful. It's helpful going in.
Yes, I would echo that. I wouldn't force an offer just to be able to tick that box that you have helped somebody, and now you're halfway there to getting help from someone else. I think that's very true. Don't force it, but having that attitude just make sure your presence different than if you're in a get attitude. So having that, as Janie was saying, having that presence of thinking about trying to help people, even if it's not something you can execute on with every single person, just makes a difference in your countenance.
Great, thank you. So we did have another question come in here. If you are currently unemployed, what's the best way to present that in a networking situation? Sometimes it can be awkward to discuss why you've left your previous employer. Do you have any tips for navigating that situation?
I think it's really great to use the words in transition when you're unemployed. It's just a nicer way to talk about what you're doing. And there can be any number of reasons that you've left your previous employer. You do not have to offer that information. I would recommend that you take some time to sit back and think about all of the positive things that were true about your former employer. Even if it's a reach, maybe you were in a very bad situation of some kind. Think of all of the positive things and think of a way to put it that way. We never, ever want to talk negatively about an old boss. We don't want to talk negatively about a situation if we can avoid it. And if you have to, during an interview, explain why you left your last job, you need to try to do it in as an objective way as possible, because even if the other person or the other company was at fault, it makes you look bad if you're the one who's saying, you wouldn't believe what jerks they were, you wouldn't believe what I had to put up with. Even if that's a true statement, you have to find a way to craft it in such a way to blend a positive light on it.
And I would just add, back onto that, and say also that you want to focus on what your passions and strengths are moving forward. So, you frame your past experience at a job and then say, well, this is what I'm looking for now. These are the sort of opportunities that I'm looking for now.
And it's a really nice opportunity to be able to say, and here's what I learned from that. Because employers will often appreciate somebody who's a problem solver, and if you can show what you learned from a negative situation, that's a huge positive in your favor.
Great, thank you. So I think we have time for just about one more question. So what if you're a naturally introverted person and you successfully broke into the group that you want to be networking with at the event, but then you found yourself falling silent? You're having a hard time chiming in, maybe you don't know what you can add to the conversation. Do you have any tips for that situation? Is it easier to try to network one-on-one just to get started, or is it okay to get into a group and just sort of listen?
I'm an introvert for sure. I call myself an amiable introvert, but I'm definitely introverted. I would say that's great. That's a great way to do that, Maggie, is to start small. Start with an individual. Like I tend to when I network, because I have my own business. I'm always trying to get more business. But so I'll go up to a person who's just sitting there and not talking with anyone either. And I'll say, well, hi, how are you? I see you're a lone ranger here as well, and then we start a conversation. And then if they're introverted and I'm introverted, we're actually having a conversation. It's great. I've met some great contacts and actually got a couple great gigs from that. So I would say definitely approaching people singly rather than in a group will probably increase your confidence and comfort level. But why not? Once you're comfortable and confident, then go for that group if you feel comfortable doing that.
And certainly you never want to be scripted or sound scripted, but doing this preparation, just thinking ahead about questions that you can ask, knowing what companies are going to be there so that you're prepared will go a long way to reducing that level of anxiety, for sure.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. I want to thank you both again for joining us today. I found this to be really informative myself, and I hope you who have joined us on the line have found it informative as well. And thank you also for joining us for today's presentation. We hope you will take what you've learned today and join us for a networking event with the University of Chicago, or whatever networking events you come across in your professional life as well. For more information about our upcoming networking events and the University of Chicago's Career Month events, please join us online at careers.uchicagoalumni.org. And you'll also find more information there about other webinars, our alumni jobs board, and a form to let us know when you've hired another UChicago graduate at your organization. As a reminder, please also watch your email for a link to the recording of today's presentation along with a follow-up survey. Once more, many thanks to Jane and Anne Marie, and thanks to all of you for joining us. We hope to see you at our next webinar.